Hello, Stephen here, welcoming you to the second presentation in the Money Talk series. In the previous presentation, we looked at financial systems, and in this presentation, we'll be looking at financial pitfalls. However, I must mention to you that we have taken a decision to split the presentation over two videos. That's in the interest of brevity. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, financial pitfalls. And as you can see from the meme there, the man seems to be quite pleased having navigated all the pitfalls and coming out at the end, very, very much having conquered them all. In a similar way, this is what we intend to do by providing you with these bits and pieces of information. Hopefully when you apply those, you will have a similar experience. That is, you'll be able to navigate the financial pitfalls when you do encounter them from time to time. All right. The first pitfall we're looking at is running out of cash. And as you can recall me saying in the intro video, running out of cash can be the demise of your business. So it's very important that you take whatever steps you need to take to prevent such a scenario from happening. How can we do so? As a matter of fact, before we go there, just remember cash is the lifeblood of any business. That's not just a cliche, it's a fact. So always have that at the back of your mind. Right, let's move on. Knowing that now, what can we use to manage our cash? The first thing we need to be able to understand is what is meant by a cash flow. How do we calculate a cash flow? Where do we get information from to work out what our cash flows are? And it's a very simple formula, very, very basic formula. Your inflows minus your outflows equals to the net cash flow. Inflows coming from sales and any other income you may get. Expenses, your outflows would be your expenses, like your admin expenses, which is, for example, utilities, security, insurance, storage, rent. Those are some examples of expenses. Admin expenses, that is. You have employment costs. If for those who have employees, you have marketing and distribution costs. Those are very important to any organization. All right, so if you were to take the inflows, subtract the outflows from them, if you have a positive value, then you have a net positive cash flow. On the other hand, if you have a negative value, meaning your outflows are greater than your inflows, then you're in a position where you now have to think about what are you going to do. I think in planning your cash flows, once you recognize that situation, you need to think about some of the solutions you can apply to rectify that situation. So the first thing to do, rectify it. But how? I think you can start thinking in terms of important timing of the cash flows. There are cash flows, outflows, both outflows and inflows. But let's focus on the outflows first. There are outflows which you have to recognize the timing of. Outflows do not necessarily, while they may be due, or while they may be payable, you don't have to do it right away. You know what the time, you know what the deadline for that is. You can push it down a bit. Things like rent, for example. If your rent is due at the end of the month, it don't make sense paying it in the middle of the month if you're in a cash crunch. Similarly with all other expenses. So recognize the timing, apply the timing to your payments. And similarly with the inflows, ensure your inflows come in on time. You need to do things to bring it in on time. What can you do to bring it in on time? If you're giving credit sales, you need to manage that very well. So your credit policy, and that is with respect to your sales and your purchases. If you're going to be buying on credit, try to work out as much favorable terms as possible. You can get defer as much as possible in times of a credit crunch, in times of a cash crunch. Okay, and as far as your sales go, no credit is best, but then in business, that's how things work. All right. So you have to work out very favorable terms for yourself when dealing with credit sales. So that's one of the things you can do: timing and monitoring your credit policies with respect to sales and purchases. If after all of that you still find yourself in a situation where negative cash flow is obtaining, then what next? You have to look at other sources of inflows. Where can you get them from? Look at funding, for example. You can either use your own savings if you have savings. You can perhaps invite people to participate, invite other participants to join you on your business venture. That would probably mean giving up some level of equity. But then there's always the banks you can deal with. And as you may recall, we do have a very strong bias towards the banks. And I'll explain to you why I'm saying this. Perhaps we can look at it now. I think one of the important things in business is always to establish a good relationship with your bankers. Immediately as you start your business, open a bank account, establish a bank account. Start putting your money, start putting your inflows into the bank, start using the bank to pay your expenses. What that does for you is create a track record, creates a history of how you manage the business. At some point down the line, that may come in very handy. In addition to that, it's not just about putting money in the bank and taking money out of the bank, but establishing a personal relationship with your bankers, whoever your banking officer is. Ensure they know who you are, what your business is, so that you can begin to build and establish that relationship, which can come in very, very handy in the future. So those are some of the things you can do when you do encounter a cash crunch, or things that you can steps you can take to prevent yourself getting into a cash situation where you have negative cash. All right, moving on. Okay, the next pitfall we'll be looking at is overtrading. And what do we mean by overtrading? Overtrading happens when you're looking at rapid growth. Now, if you're unable to manage rapid growth, then you are likely to run into this pitfall of overtrading. Now, what are some of the things that can happen as a result of rapid growth? Sales, for example, sales ballooning. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does it mean? If you're selling whatever you're selling, it means that perhaps inventory, you have to cater for more inventory. Catering for more inventory could perhaps mean more storage costs. Storage costs, in it, for example, rental costs, electricity costs, insurance costs, security costs. All of that is related to having more inventory in place. Marketing and distribution. Of course, if there's more sales, mean your distribution network is widening. Your requirements to meet that distribution network is perhaps going to be more demanding. You may need more vehicle. You need more people, and that's a very big one. Staff. So it's very, very important when you are expanding rapidly that you are able to manage the rapid growth, manage the expansion, failing which you fall into the pitfall of overtrading. Some people would prefer to grow gradually. Others, on the other hand, perhaps just by default, sales can just take off exponentially and cause you to overtrade. Another example where this can come about, if you just happen to get a large contract. I think one of the things with large contracts is that the cash flows, the timing of the flows is very different from a normal business. Um, in large contracts, you have what are known as progress payments. So perhaps at the beginning, you look at the mobilization fees and then a percentage of completion. As you progress through the project, you find, well, as you complete various aspects, then then you submit your certificate for payment. But what's happening in the meantime? While all that is taking place, you still have utilities to pay, you still have staff to pay, you still have marketing costs to pay, you still have a host of other expenses to pay. Therefore means that if you unless you're able to manage this big contract, yes, big incomes, yes, but the timing of the flows are not consistent, meaning the inflows are not consistent with the outflows. The outflows are constantly going out, but the inflows are only coming in at specific points in time. And I think that's where your bankers come in again. Um, so we come back to the bank. Very important. I think once you recognize that, okay, you have a large contract which can bring you these kind of benefits, um, but the flows are not even, then I think is something you can approach the banks with. take your contract to them and see what kind of assistance you could get from them to be able to manage your cash flows, failing which overtrading is likely to happen. And when that happens, as you can see from the diagram, that feeling of being overwhelmed. Unless you're able to manage this properly, overtrading can become a significant pitfall. Stress, of course, your own stress levels are gone up. You find yourself drowning in your activities. So it's very important that you understand how to manage rapid growth and in the event of, for example, large contracts, knowing how to deal with the timings of the cash flow. It's not a normal and regular business that has even cash flows. Okay, so that's overtrading for us. Let's move on. So we have looked at the pitfalls of running out of cash and overtrading. In the concluding video, we will look at three other pitfalls, which no doubt we'll be looking to navigate successfully through. Thanks for joining us. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so that you can be notified when new videos are released. Thanks once again and goodbye.